So
Mhm.
it is unique across entire Microsoft Azure platform, right? Because when I
Absolutely.
try to give names, test one, two, three, test anything I try, it is giving, it is already taken. So just wanted to confirm.
Absolutely. It is unique across Azure. So two customers of Azure cannot have the same storage account name, or you cannot have two storage account with the same name configured. It's unique. And why it is unique? Because it has a public endpoint. Whenever you need to access the data from a storage account, you can get its you can get that data's URL, that object's URL, and you will notice that it's a public URL. Anybody can access it. So anything that is publicly accessible has to be unique to avoid any DNS conflict. So Azure doesn't allow. The moment you type the storage account name, Azure, the form in the backend will quickly check whether they have a storage account with that name existing or not. If it exists, you will see the error that says this name is already taken, right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So today we are going to focus on network. Our focus is on network and network security. Now for network, as I showed yesterday, that you already have a video, and I in fact shared a networking fundamentals of networking presentations with you. So if you have gone through it, well and good. If you have not, then also we can continue with this topic today, and you will have entire day tomorrow with you, wherein you can at least spare 2 to 3 hours on your personal learning, and you can go through those topics. So we'll get started with uh, network. Then I will also ask you to create the hands-on lab environment tomorrow. So you will also need to create a lab environment tomorrow. Why I'm asking you to do it in your spare time? Because the session time is very crucial. I don't want to do that activity in the session time. Because from Monday onwards, we will start with Defender services. And unless you have a couple of systems up and running, couple of virtual machines, a few storage accounts and few additional components, what are you going to secure? So you need to have that environment up and running, and that you can build yourself because you already know how to build a virtual machine. Now, similarly, you can build some additional virtual machines. So I'll share what you need to do in terms of building the environment. You build the environment and then you shut it down, keep it shut down. And whenever I ask you to turn it on, you need to turn that environment on. So this is what you all need to do. Basically, you will need to build a lab environment for Microsoft, security services. So your lab environment will comprise of a couple of services. So Microsoft Security Lab Environment. Now, this lab environment comprises of a minimum of, I would say, 3 virtual machines. And when I say 3 virtual machines, it is Microsoft Windows Server 2016, 2019, 2022. These are the 3 servers that you need to build because I want you to see whether the experience of a security service differs from one version of operating system to another version of operating system. So 3 virtual machines with Microsoft Windows Server 2016, 2019, and 2022. While you build these virtual machines, please make sure that you do not grant more than 2 virtual CPU cores to each of these virtual machines, not more than 2 virtual CPU cores. Why I'm saying 2 virtual CPU cores? Because in your account, you have a limit of 10 virtual CPU cores in each region. So either you will need to build environment in multiple regions, but in one region, East US, you will not have more than 10 virtual CPU cores. So 2 virtual CPU cores, you need to build these 3 VMs. Then I want you to experience a client operating system also. So you can build one virtual machine with Windows 10 or 11 operating system, Windows 10 and 11 OS. Either you choose 10 or 11 because I want to see how the client operating system behaves or how security services protect client operating systems other than servers. So when we do Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, we're not only deploying Microsoft Defender for Endpoint capabilities on servers, we will also deploy on clients. Then if you have, I'd say if you have interest in Linux or if you have experience with Linux, I would also request you to deploy at least one Linux VM, and I leave the choice whether you want to deploy it for using Red Hat or CentOS or SUSE, because Azure has everything. Red Hat, SUSE, CentOS, Ubuntu, etc. That's your choice. I leave that decision to you. Then you need to have a minimum of 4 storage accounts. And in these 4 storage accounts, a minimum of 1 object has to be there. Minimum of 1. So when I say 1, you store some data in all the 4 storage accounts. All of these storage accounts will be configured with the same configuration. Don't provision it with premium disk. Don't use GRS, use LRS. Why we need 4 storage accounts? You will get to know in future that why did we create 4. So 4 storage accounts we need. Then now before this virtual machine, obviously you cannot build a virtual machine unless you have a network. So you should have at least 2 virtual networks. I can say 1 production and 1 non-production network. This is just for the understanding purpose. So 2 virtual networks, you already have 1 virtual network, you can build 1 more virtual network. You don't need to provision any machine in that. All these machines can go in the same virtual network that you have provisioned your Active Directory in. Now, the other thing, all of these virtual machines, because you already have a domain controller, so you have one AD Active Directory Domain Services VM, right? Which is your domain controller. Now, what you need to do, all these virtual machines, I would not say all. See, you cannot join a Linux VM to a domain. That's not how Linux is programmed for, but you can join Windows to a domain. So what I would suggest that you can join, let's say at least 1 or 2 servers to domain. So probably 2016 or 2019 server, you can join it to the domain, and your 2010 VM, I'm sorry, your Windows 10 or 11 VM, you can join it to the domain, so that you also see the domain experience, that how a virtual machine, how a server or a client OS behaves or authenticates when it is joined to the domain. So this is the lab environment that you need to build. So this is network, VM, compute, network, storage, and then comes a SQL database also. You will also need an Azure SQL PaaS DB with minimum configuration. Now you can leave this part right now. Don't build it tomorrow. I will let you know when you build it, because PaaS is an expensive service, so it will unnecessarily cost you money. So you don't need to do this. Anything that I'm putting in red, you don't need to do it tomorrow. Then you need to build an Azure app service plan also, and a sample application hosted. This I will show you how to need to do, but at least I'm telling you what we need to do at a bare minimum in this lab so that we can test the functionalities. So this is what you need to do. I'll put that into the chat window. Please make sure that anything which is there in black, you have it ready. This is optional. Linux is optional. If you have interest, go ahead and do it. If you don't have, leave it. Linux is optional. This is either or. You can provision both the VMs or one of them, but at least one client operating system I need. I need all the server operating systems so that you have a good experience with all the server operating systems. This part you already have. Domain Active Directory domain service VM is already there, which you are currently using. So I can put it as green. And this part you also have. You just need to build one one more network, and you will consider it as non-production network. Is everyone with me on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then another thing, what are you going to do with this environment if it has nothing? I'm saying these servers. So what I want you to do, I'm saying this is, once again, this is optional. If you want to explore the real capabilities of Microsoft security products, you need to make sure that you install some applications on these servers. When I say some applications, you can typically install, I would say, sample applications like VLC Media Player, let's say. You can install Google Chrome. And this goes same with client OS also. You can install Adobe Acrobat Reader. You can deploy, uh, I would say, let's say, install Microsoft Teams, etc. I'm saying the point that I'm trying to make is that you should have some applications running on these servers so that when we do the security products, you can see that how these security products can protect my applications, or how these security products can easily identify vulnerabilities if there is any in my applications. So this is optional part. If you do that, you will actually explore good capabilities around these security solutions. And that's the reason I'm giving you this task for tomorrow so that you can do it in your spare time. Because if we try to do this activity in the on Monday, then it will take entire Monday, and we don't want to waste time in the session. So that's what you need to do. And same applications you also need to install here. I'm not saying that you only install this application. I'm just giving you a choice that you can install any applications that you feel, but there has to be some applications so that it will start to make sense to you that why are we doing all of this.
Raghu, can you make it enlarged because the fonts are small?
No problem. I'm putting that in the chat window.
Okay.
I'm now putting that into the chat window, the configuration part. You can copy it from there.
Thank you.
So I put that into the chat window, guys. Copy it on your system, and please make sure that you complete it. I'm saying it may take a couple of minutes, probably an hour, but it is not difficult that you cannot do without any input and guidance. It's pure virtual machines provisioning, logging into those virtual machines, and then deploying sample applications. So can I expect that you all will have this environment provision tomorrow and shut it down once it is provisioned to save cost? And Monday, when we start the session, when I ask you to turn these machines on, at that point in time, you need to turn them on. Is that a yes from everyone?
Yes, Raghuveer, we already have one storage account created, right? So that can also be considered as
Yeah,
exists.
you can create 3 additional.
3 additional.
So 4 storage accounts we need. Create 3 more storage accounts. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you only provision these services. If you have interest in other services, you can also provision it. However, be cognizant of the fact it should not happen that your service eats up the entire cost. That should not happen. That's the only thing. Okay. Great. So this is what you need to do. Now let's get started with network. Any which ways, we will provision one more network today, and I will explain some concepts around network security. So this is the lab environment that all of you needs to provision. Please make sure that you provision it tomorrow. Now let's move on. Let's start with network security in Azure. Is the font size okay now? Or should I increase it more?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Great. Because today I'm delivering this training from my hotel. I only have my laptop. I don't have an additional screen that I can use wherein it becomes more easier and more comfortable for me also. But that's okay. So let's start with network security in Azure. Now, you all know that network is an integral part of any environment. And without a network, you will not have your services communicate and collaborate. If you want your services to communicate and collaborate, if you want your services to be able to share resources and information, you will need to build a network, assign a network to those services, or put those services into a network then only you can have those services communicate and collaborate. So networking is very important in communication and collaboration, both from technology as well as from interpersonal capabilities. What I have experienced in my entire full-time employment, I worked with, uh, I'm saying in the 20 years of my employment, I worked with 7 companies. And in those 7 companies, or the crux of my, my entire experience is that networking, is very important. I probably realized it after 5, 6 years. And when I realized it, I made good advantage of it. I took advantage of it and I did create my network. Network is very important. Network takes you places. People, your management, your manager, your team member, you must communicate with them. You should have good, harmonious relationship with them. Competition is okay, but it has to be healthy competition. So networking is very important because it gives you an opportunity to learn and share. So you learn from others and you share with others also what you know. So that is the same thing in technology space. Networking is important. And when it comes to networking is important, or network is the backbone. Now, I don't know if I made this statement in the past, but virtualization and networking is the backbone of cloud computing. Without virtualization and networking, cloud computing wouldn't have been possible, because today the public cloud service providers, they are taking advantage of virtualization technologies to build virtual services, build and offer virtual services, and they take advantage of networking to offer those services globally to all the customers. And that is why customer need an internet connection to be able to consume services from cloud. So networking and virtualization, they they are the backbone of cloud computing. Without these two services, cloud computing is not possible, right? And without networking, I would not say anything is possible, or we have huge dependency on networking now. In our technology space, there is a huge dependency. So when it comes to networking in Azure, the service that we use in Azure to build, provision, and manage the communication and collaboration, the connectivity, is known as virtual network. This is the service that we use in Azure. Now, why do we need a virtual network, or what are the features of virtual network? I already have that in my video in detail. Here I will be, I will quickly explain it, and because I need to focus on security, so I will quickly cover that part, the theoretical part, and then we'll move into the hands-on lab. So if you want to understand the networking part, what you can do, you can probably navigate to, uh, you can just type virtual network in Azure in a browser. That will give you this page, which basically talks about what is a virtual network. I'll share it with you in the chat window for your reference. And I'll also put that into the documentation. So virtual network in Azure. Now, I will share my entire screen actually, because I was sharing one window. Okay. I hope you're able to see me on Azure Virtual Network documentation.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So here you can see it says what is an Azure Virtual Network. Now, if you read this, it says Azure Virtual Network is a service that provides the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. So it creates a private network in Azure. An instance of the service enables many types of Azure resources to securely communicate with each other. So what do we get here? What are we getting here? It is a private network for a customer that lets customer build, provision, run services in Azure Cloud securely. That's what it does. So you can enable many services and they will communicate securely with each other, the internet and the on-premises network. Now, when it comes to the communication, it supports internal communication. So machines can communicate with each other, which means when you have 3, 4 virtual machines provisioned as part of your lab environment, you will see that those machines can by default communicate with each other. You can ping those machines from one another. You can copy data from one another. That will work because network enables internal communication. It enables communication with the internet. So machines can also communicate with the internet. You can browse the internet from those machines, and you can also communicate with on-premise resources. So if you have a VPN configured, you can communicate with on-premise resources also using a network. That's another capability of network. Now, this is how a network looks like. So this is a small video of 2 minutes video. I will quickly run this video and this will quickly explain what is networking in Azure and what are the benefits that it brings on the table. So I'll run the video.
Managing a distributed network infrastructure that's organized, dependable, and secure can be challenging. Azure Virtual Networks offer a solution for organizing, securing, and connecting cloud resources seamlessly. An Azure Virtual Network, VNet, is a secure, isolated network environment in the Azure Cloud, allowing you to create and manage virtual machines, services, and resources in a logically isolated network. Imagine 2 virtual machines in Azure, one hosting a web application and another hosting a database, and you want them to communicate securely and efficiently. By creating a virtual network, the web application can send requests to the database server and receive responses, all while maintaining a secure connection and minimizing latency, ensuring your website runs smoothly and securely. You can also use a virtual network to host a web application and a database server in different subnets. A subnet is a smaller network within a larger one. The web application and database server can exchange data within the same virtual network, but you can also control the traffic flow to the subnets with security rules. This allows only public internet traffic to access the web application, while database servers are protected within private subnets, allowing only internal traffic. Virtual networks also enable connecting an on-premises network to Azure using a VPN gateway, creating a private tunnel between your office and the cloud. Traffic routed through the tunnel is encrypted and provides secure access to resources. When creating a virtual network in Azure, you define subnets, security groups, routing tables, and other network connectivity needs. You can also attach resources like virtual machines, load balancers, and storage accounts to the virtual network, allowing you to build a secure, reliable, and scalable virtual network environment for your unique needs. Azure Virtual Networks securely connect cloud resources, VMs, web apps, databases, and on-premises networks to help you achieve your goals.
This video was created with the help of artificial intelligence. Learn more about our principles for AI-generated content at aka.ms/AI.
All right. So this is what virtual network is all about. Now, if you have noticed in this video, they talked about a couple of things. First, they talk about secure communication. So it said that a web server can communicate with database or with application server securely. That's first thing. Second, it talked about hybrid connectivity. When I said hybrid connectivity, resources or virtual machines in Azure can communicate with on-premises machines with the help of networking, with the help of a feature of networking, which is a VPN, virtual private network. Then you also seen one concept, which is segmentation. Segmentation basically means that if you have 3 virtual machines, a web server, an app server, and a database server, you will not put them in the same segment. They will be part of the same network. However, you will separate them into segments and put them in each segment so that you can apply security controls or access controls accordingly. And if you remember, uh, I did show you the lab. When I was giving you an example of availability. Give me a moment here. Yeah, this presentation, which had a 3-tier architecture mentioned. Okay, over here. In this, you can see that all the virtual machines, they belong to the same application, which is cloudexpert.com. However, they are segmented. They are kept in 3 different segments: subnet, segmentation, or subnetwork is the one and the same thing. So there is a network, then you break it down into multiple smaller network, and then it becomes subnetwork. So these are segmented across subnetworks, and hence you can apply security controls. So the security control is applied, which does not allow a direct communication from web services to database. The communication is via app service. So only app communicates with database, web communicates with app. Web doesn't communicate with database. And this arrangement is very important. Why? Because web is internet facing. This is my attack surface area. This can be attacked. This can be compromised. So I don't want that attack to propagate to my database VMs. If I put all of these VMs in one, I'm saying if in this virtual network, I only create one subnet and put them all in that subnet, then how will I apply security control? How will I put a control? How will I say that database should only be accessible on TCP port 1433? Web should only be accessible on port 80 and 443. App should be accessible on 80805723 or any other port. So we segment a network so that we can enable secure communication. We can control traffic across different segments. That's the purpose of segmentation, which is very important. Is everyone with me on this concept? Let me know if you have any question, because if you have understood this concept, you would have understood the entire network security. Can you repeat that? Okay, once again, I'll repeat it. So if I have an application, a 3-tier application that comprises of multiple virtual machines, I cannot put them all into one place, one segment. The best practice says that I should create multiple segments. Now, in the on-premises terminology, if I talk about on-premises, then in on-premises, you have a LAN, which stands for local area network. Then you have a VLAN, which stands for virtual LAN. And this LAN, this local area network, typically it has an IP address space like this: 192.168.1.0/24. I'm taking a class C private IP address range. So what we do, we break this LAN down into multiple smaller segments, which is known as VLAN. And each VLAN basically means you break this address space down into smaller segments, into multiple address spaces, which is known as VLAN, and you assign each VLAN to a department. So for example, you assign VLAN to HR department, you assign one VLAN or one address space to admin department, one to, let's say, sales and marketing. The other one you will assign to operations. And why are you doing this? You are doing this so that you can apply security controls. The purpose of breaking a network down into multiple smaller network is to do fine-grained security. Apply security controls. For example, HR, they are privileged. They need access to almost everything. Admins, they may need some restriction. Sales and marketing probably need access. But operations, this is where the actual bread and butter comes, because this brings revenue to the business. So hence, this is where restriction needs to be there. So I don't want my operations, for example, take your example. I'm saying you all are part of operations. A lot of restrictions are there on your laptop. Now go to an HR laptop, you will see a couple of things are free. HR is able to access Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail. HR is able to access Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. HR is able to access Naukri.com, Indeed.com. HR is able to access LinkedIn and other websites also. But you have restrictions as part of operations team. You are not expected, or you're not allowed to do that, because that will hamper your productivity. And the same behavior will increase the productivity of HR, because their job is different. Your job is different. So security is there to control, to define, separation of duty is enabled by network security controls. So that is why this is what we do in on premises. Similarly, in cloud, we do the segmentation. But in cloud, we don't migrate our employees. We don't migrate departments in cloud. What we do, we migrate applications that belongs to these departments, HR, admin, sales, and marketing operations. So in cloud, we build segments. So when we create a network, now network provides isolated. So it's a logical isolation, logical isolation it creates in cloud, or you can say it's a logically isolated space that has been given to a customer. So every customer of Azure will provision a network which creates logical separation, so that your resources are separated from your competitors or other customers' resources. And it has not happened in the history of cloud in the last 18, 19 years that a customer is accidentally or intentionally able to see resources of other customer. And that is possible through, that was made possible through networking. So network is very important. So this is what we are going to do. We are assuming that we are assuming that we are going to host critical applications, production applications in Microsoft Azure. Hence, we need to build a network. So we build a similar network that resembles this image, which means we are going to build a network. We will segment that network into multiple segments, multiple subnets, and we will designate each subnet for a specific initiative. For example, in web subnet, I'll put all my web servers so that I can control traffic to those web subnet. In app subnet, I'll put my applications. In database subnet, I'll put my databases, and I'll provision some additional subnets wherein I will put common applications, management services like AD, DNS, DSCP, antivirus solution, EDR solution, XDR solution, monitoring solution, or any third-party services. That's what I'm going to do. And then definitely I will have users who will access the applications or services that I will deploy in my network. Are you with me on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Let's go ahead and build the network in Azure then. As I said, since we are running short of time, I cannot get into the detailed theoretical aspect of it, details of it. For that, I would probably request you to watch the video wherein I have explained that in detail, starting from what is network, why do we need a network, how does a network look like in on-premises, and then how does a network look like in Azure and in cloud, and then how it compares and correlates, and then the details with respect to subnetting, IP addressing space, and all that is there in that 1 hour video. So watch that video, you will get to know. Now we'll move on. So I would request you all to log into your respective Azure subscription. Now, before we log into the Azure subscription, we will need to do some whiteboarding work, because you're going to build a network. So you will need to do the design first. So let's design your network. So we are going to build a virtual network. And let's say we are going to build our production virtual network. Production virtual network. So I am going to segment. So first of all, I need network, my production virtual network. This is how we denote network in Azure. We write VNet in short. So my production virtual network needs an IP address space. address space or IP address space is one and the same thing. So just to keep it simple, I will take class C private IP address range, which is 192.168.1.0/24. That's the address space of my network. Then I will need to segment this network into multiple smaller segments. So my segments will be web subnet, and I'm assuming that I'll put my web services which are internet facing into this segment. Then I will create an app subnet, or I can say application subnet, and any application that doesn't need to be accessible, that doesn't need to be exposed to the internet, I'll put into this segment. Then I'll create one segment for database. All my database services will be deployed in this segment. So all virtual machines that I will deploy databases on will be part of this segment. Then I'll create a management subnet also. And in this management subnet, I will put my management applications like ADDS, my domain controller, my DNS server, if I have separate DNS services, my EDR solution, if I deploy EDR on the top of a VM, if I'm not using Microsoft Defender, but using an IS solution, my monitoring services, my, I would say, any additional service I will put here. Any third-party service I will put here. And if required, I can build more segments. If there is anything that comes to your mind, you can build more segments. Any which ways, you need more segments when you deploy solutions like application gateway. It requires a segment of itself. When you deploy a solution like Bastion host, it requires a segment of its own. When you deploy a solution like Data Factory, it requires a separate all of these services, they require a separate subnet. They don't, you cannot co-locate them in these subnets. They require a separate. So this is what we are going to build. This is what we are going to build. And this is just an example that you also need additional subnets for some services. So let's do the IP address planning first. Before we get into the implementation, we will need to do the planning on a whiteboard, and then we will need to build it. So this is my address space, which is 192.168.1.0/24. This gives me a total of 256 IP addresses. 256 IP addresses I get from here. How do I get it? As I said, you watch the video, you will get to know. There I have shown the calculation. So what I will do, I will break this address space down into smaller address spaces so that I can assign here. So my web subnet address space will be 192.168.1.0/27. Now /27 gives me 32 IP addresses. 32 IP addresses. Similarly, I will go with the same to the other segments also. Now, if you say that why did I choose 32 IPs for web? What if we have 50 servers? Yes, you can choose. Then you can put it like 26. If you put it like 26, then it will have 64 IPs. So I'll just keep it simple because we will not have those many servers in the lab environment. We will understand. Now, technology remains the same, whether you understand it with one server or you do it for 1,000 server. The process will remain the same. So this is my app segment, which is 1.32. Similarly, I will put another segment, which is 1.64. Then this is my another segment, which is 1.96. So these are the address spaces basically for my subnets. Now I'll put this information into the chat window because this is exactly what you need to do when you build your network. So I put that into the chat window. Please make sure that you follow the same configuration for your network. Now we are going to build the network. We are done with the planning. We have decided that we are going to build a network with 4 subnetworks. The network location will be East US, and we are going to use this network for a production use case. This is the planning part. Then we will get into the implementation now. Are you with me on this?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do the implementation. The topics that we will do after this, like firewall, gateways, and other topics, will entirely depend on this configuration. So is my screen visible to everyone? Can you see the Azure portal on my screen, the key vault dashboard?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's build our virtual network. Give me Give me 1 minute, guys. COC भेज दे रहा हूँ, चैट में डाल दे रहा हूँ. I got it. थोड़ा स्लो चल रहा है सिस्टम ना, ये मेरे खुद के मोबाइल से चल रहा है. पहले वर्क स्पेस देखना, Amazon All right, I'm back. Let me share my screen once again. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, Rafik.
Okay, so we have one network, which is MDC network. Now, when we created this network, the purpose was to quickly deploy a virtual machine. So we basically built this network by taking into consideration that specific purpose. But now we are going to build a network, a network which resembles a production network. So we'll click on create once again. And now we'll build a network. So my resource group, I can select the same resource group, then the name of the network. So here I can take the name of the network as my production network. The location will remain the same as East US. Then I'll go to the next tab, which is security. Now over here, these are security services that can help me safeguard my resources in the network as well as help me protect my network. But these are expensive services. Virtual network encryption is a new service which says that enable virtual network encryption to encrypt traffic traveling within the virtual network. Virtual machines may have accelerated networking enabled. Traffic to public IP addresses is not encrypted. What it is trying to say that when traffic is when you are sending some data from one virtual machine to another in the same network, it does the encryption. It encrypts that data. It is actually not needed. If you are in office, once you step into the office, you can go to anywhere in the office and you will not have security guards stopping you, validating you, verifying you, because you have already done the security. You've already, you've already gone through the security check. So when there are virtual machines, I'm saying, look at this, what this service is, it says, then when web services send some traffic to app, or when app sends some traffic to DB, this traffic will be encrypted. It is encryption in transit will be followed. I don't personally think that it is needed because all of these VMs are part of the same network. They are in a network, so I can trust these services. However, in some industries like banking, in banking, they don't even trust inter-tier communication. This is known as intra-tier communication. So there are two web servers. When they communicate with each other, this is known as intra-tier. When the web server communicates with app, it is known as inter-tier. So except banking, in all the industries, inter and intra-tier communication is trusted. But banking, since they deal with crucial data, they typically don't trust inter-tier communication. Intra-tier they trust. Inter-tier they don't trust. So what they do, they deploy firewall in between two tiers. And this is where Azure is also saying that I can encrypt the traffic when it travels within the virtual network. Within the virtual network, traffic is traveling and I'm encrypting it. So I don't need this service. Then comes Azure Bastion service. This service we basically use when we don't have a VPN connection created between our network and Azure network. For example, the laptop that you are using for this training, from that laptop, you're connecting to your Azure virtual machine. And ideally, you should have a VPN from your laptop or the network that your laptop is part of, from that network to Azure, so that you can do communication over private IPs. But what are we doing instead? We are using public IPs. Our machine has public IP. And because of that public IP, we are able to RDP or SSH into our virtual machines in Azure, which is not a recommended option. But since this is a lab environment, we are doing it. In a production environment, you don't do it. Or if you know that your applications are hosted in Azure, and if you know any Azure VM, do you connect to that VM using its public IP? No. You always connect using its private IP because your laptop has a VPN client that authenticates you to your employer's corporate network, and that corporate network is connected via VPN to Azure Virtual Network. Am I making sense, guys? Yeah. Okay. So we'll not go with Azure Bastion. The Azure Bastion service basically provides me a browser-based RDP and SSH connectivity to my public without needing a public IP in Azure. So if you want to understand the Bastion service, if you want to provision the Bastion service, if you want to understand the capabilities and provisioning part, I have a separate video on Bastion in my Azure playlist. In that video, I'm actually explaining what Bastion host service is. How do we provision this service? What are the prerequisites? And once this service is provisioned, how do you use it? And while you are using it, what are your management and maintenance options or troubleshooting opportunities with respect to Bastion? So that all information goes into that one video of around 35 or 40 minutes. You can go through that video that gives you the information. We'll move on to the next Azure firewall. Now, this is what we will do in the lab. I will want you all to build an Azure firewall, build and configure an Azure firewall so you have good idea around here. But for now, I can tell you that Azure firewall is like your next gen firewall like Cisco, Palo Alto, Barracuda, Checkpoint, the firewalls that you know. It is a similar firewall service. The only difference is it's a managed service. Azure manages it all you need to do is configure the security parameters. You just need to define that what kind of traffic or applications you want to block, and firewall will take care of it. So we'll do that in the lab. Next is Azure DDoS protection. Now it's an expensive solution. DOS stands for denial of service. DDoS stands for distributed denial of service. Now this is a type of attack that is triggered from the internet to a web application or a resource. And because of this attack, that resource or application is busy serving the request, and the legitimate user request it is not able to serve, because that attack will keep your application or resource too busy to actually serve the legitimate request. So this attack can disrupt your application. This attack can result in a loss of revenue for your business. So there are, there are solutions that can prevent you for this attack, and Azure provides you that solution. Azure DDoS Network Protection is a paid service that offers enhanced DDoS mitigation capabilities. So it's a paid service. If you want to enable it, you just need to check this box. But before you do that, let's see the cost of this service, so that you will not do this mistake even in your wildest dreams. So this is the pricing page for DDoS protection. Let's say we want DDoS protection in US East. Currency is dollars. This is the cost. Monthly charges. It includes protection for up to 100 public IPs. This is the monthly cost. What is the per day cost, guys? Approximately
$30.
what will be the approximate per day cost? Can somebody do the reverse calculation real quick? I'm just asking approximately, not the exact figure. What is approximately?
$100, 8,000
Around
rupees.
$100 per day, right?
Yeah.
And what is the total amount of credit that you have in your subscription?
It's $100 for a month.
$100. Great. So now you understand, if you buy, even if you check this box by mistake, what will happen? You check this box and your $100 is gone. And from tomorrow onwards, you will just see, all of us doing the work, doing the hands-on lab, but you will not be able to do it because your credit is gone. So please be careful while enabling these services. The second tab is security, and I'm not enabling any of these services because they are expensive services. But I have told you, now Azure Firewall, we will do. It is not that expensive. We will do this lab. If you are interested in Azure Bastion, you can watch the video and provision it. It only costs you $1 or $2 per day. So you provision the service, you understand the capability, then you delete it. It would have hardly, cost you less than $1 because you will do it just for a couple of hours. But but DDoS is like $100 per day. You enable the service. Now the other thing is, if you enable this service, and if it costs you $100 per day, which means around $4 per hour, which means around $1.15. It is not like that. You enable the service, Azure will upfront charge you $100, upfront charge you this amount. So they will not. This service doesn't come under pay-as-you-go plan. This is a one-time cost. You will need to pay that cost if you enable the service. So please do not enable this service. Are you with me on this? The reason I'm emphasizing the fact because I'm asking you to, practice in your spare time and build the lab environment. So I don't want any participant by mistake tomorrow while creating a lab, while creating additional networks, selecting this service, DDoS service. Are you with me on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Raghuveer,
Yes.
in the plan, it
Yes.
said 100 IPs also. What is the significance of those 100 IPs?
100 IPs basically means that DDoS is typically triggered from internet, from IP addresses. So it will protect you from 100 IP addresses, 100 attacker IP addresses. That's what it means. It's 100 attacker IP addresses. And if you need more than 100, then for each additional IP address, it will cost you $30 per resource per month. That's the logic here.
Okay. So if it senses that this is a DDoS type of request, right, falls into DDoS category. So 100 total 100, right, or 100 per minute, or what is that concurrent 100?
No, it is like see, DDoS attack is typically triggered on web applications. I'm saying, for example, your employer has a couple of public facing web applications. So DDoS attack will be triggered on those web applications. Now each application has a public IP because with which the DNS is configured. Without a public IP, no application will be internet facing. So it is protecting those public IPs. So in turns, you can say that you can protect up to 100 applications. Now, sometimes what happens, we use a common public IP for multiple applications, and then we do the netting in between. So what you do typically, you have a public IP configured on your firewall. To that public IP, all the applications are mapped. And when the traffic hits on the firewall, in the firewall, you have netting configured, network address translation configured, and accordingly, you route the traffic to multiple applications. So DDoS has nothing to do with this. DDoS means it will protect your public IPs. So you will define that, okay, these are my public IPs in my network, and it will protect you. So it is up to 100 public IPs basically means that if you enable this service and you have only one web application, it will still charge you $2,944. And if you have 100 web applications, it will still charge you $2,944. But if you have more than 100 web applications or more than 100 public IPs, then for each additional IP, you will be paying $29, $29.50 per resource per month. That's the logic.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So it says network protection is enabled at the virtual network level. So in your virtual network, whatever applications are, it will protect you. So that's the concept of DDoS. Okay. So we are not enabling any of this service. Then comes the important part for which we have done the whiteboarding exercise, which is IP address. This is where we need to select the address space of our network and the segments that we need to create in the network. So now we'll not go with the default, we'll create our own. So the first thing that we do is we delete this address space, the existing one. This is a private IP address space from class A. This is class A private IP address space. So we'll delete it. We've deleted the address space. Now we will add our own address space. So we'll click on add, and I'm saying you just need to remove the 10 from here like this. You need to delete this address space and put your own address space that you have done the exercise on the white paper. So let's put that address space, which is this. So we will use 192.168.1.0/24. So we'll put that here. Okay, now remove /24 from here because Azure gives you an option to select the address CIDR block from this drop down. So from here you can select /24. So look carefully, I have put 192.168.1.0 and selected /24 from the other box. Are you with me on this?
Yes.
Okay, now this is the address space, but you will need to create a subnet also. I'm saying you will need to break it down into multiple segments, subnetworks. So I'll create my first subnet. So I will click on add a subnet. Okay, now we also have this address space with our other VNet. We have another VNet that we created the other day, which is Defender VNet. It is giving you a warning. It says that your address space is conflicting with another VNet, which is this. So you cannot use the same address space. Otherwise, you will not be able to configure VPN if you require it in future. So I would rather suggest that the third octet instead of 1, use 10. Let's keep it 192.168.10.0 instead of 1.0. So that warning is gone. Make sense? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Now add a subnet. So when you click on add a subnet, it will give you this option. In the name field, the subnet purpose will remain default, but in the name field, you will type web subnet. And in the IP address range field, in the name field, we'll type web subnet. The IP address range will remain the same. And then in the starting IP address field, it is 192.1.10.0. I'm saying the whiteboarding exercise that we did, we need to do the third octet as instead of 1, it is 10.0. So I'm putting 10 everywhere, I'm adding 0 so that you don't get confused. Okay. Now I'll share it once again with you. You need to make sure that it is the same manner. Updated address space for VNet. So please use the updated one. So what I will do, I will go and I will type 10.0, and here I will select instead of /24, I'll select /27. That's it. Rest of the information go as it is. And hit add. When you hit add, you will see it here. Web subnet, IP address range is this, and you can see the total 32 IPs I've taken. This is the first IP 10.0, the last IP is 10.31. So since the last IP is 10.31, when I add another subnet, which is app subnet, or I will say application subnet, when I add this application subnet, my starting IP would be 10.31. In the starting IP address space, you will type 10.31, and size you will always take /27. So it is 192.168, 10.30, sorry, not 10.31, 10.32. The last IP is 10.31 from the previous range. So the first IP of this range will start with 10.32. So this is what you need to do. So once again, in the name field, you need to type application subnet. In the starting address field, you will need to type 192.168.10.32. And in the size, you need to select from drop down /27. Are you with me on this?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Great. Rest of the information, leave it as it is. So I've added the second subnet also. Similarly, I will add a third subnet, which is my DB subnet. So I will type database.
I have a question.
Sure.
While creating the application subnet, the IPv4 address range, it stays with the /24. But I have to change it to /27, right?
No, that IPv4 address space is your address space of this network from where the subnet is getting created. So it will remain the same everywhere. You will always need to, so this, you're talking about this part, right? This one.
Yeah.
Where I'm moving the cursor. So this is your address space of the network. So it will always show you that this is the address space of the network from where you are creating the subnet. So your subnet address space must be contained in your network address space. That's what it means. Your subnet address must be from network address space.
Okay, but when I try to create it, it says the subnet is not a valid cited block. Use.
Yeah, so you need to fix the IP addresses one. So for example, I'm creating DB subnet. I'll put /10.64 and I'll select size as 27 and it will fix.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Okay. So my DB is also created. The last one is my management subnet. So I'll click on add subnet once again. Now it is not that I need to provide all the subnets right now. I can also add and remove subnets after my network is created. So probably what I'll do, the fourth one I'll add when after the network is created, so that you will also understand this concept. So right now I'm only adding 3 subnets: web, app, and DB. That's it. I will move on to the next tab, which is tags. Tag is optional, whether you want, you do it or not do it, and then review plus create. This will do a quick validation to check whether the configuration that you have supplied is correct. So my validation passed. I will hit create now. So this is how I create a virtual network, which is nothing but an address space that is broken down into multiple smaller address spaces. So my network is getting created.
Raghu, can I share my screen for a minute?
Yeah, please do that.
Hope you can see my screen. So I'm trying to create the app subnet. This would be my IPv4 address space. And the starting address would be 192.168.10.31.
No, 10.32, 32. It cannot be 31. 31 was the last IP address of the previous segment. You can see on the left of your screen, it says 32, 31. So it will start with 32.
Thank you.
That was the reason you were getting that error. I'll start sharing once again. Okay, so my network, my virtual network is deployed. My virtual network is deployed. I will click on go to resource. That will take me to my virtual network. So I'm in my virtual network here, you can see, and under settings, I see address space, connected device, subnets, Bastion, DDoS, firewall, and other capabilities which are there. So I will first click on address space. When I click on address space, I see the address space of my network. When I see the address space, the first IP, last IP, I'll see the total number of IPs also. If I click on connected device, this basically shows me the machines which are getting IP addresses from this network. But since it doesn't have any machine, we have just provisioned it, so I don't see anything here. Then comes subnet. I also see subnets of my network, and there you will see all the 3 subnets. Right? All the 3 subnets, web, app, and DB, all the 3 subnets are shown. Now, if you want to create additional subnets, you can create here by clicking on plus subnet. Then you also have a gateway subnet. This subnet is used for creating VPN connectivity. So when you want to create a VPN from this production network to your on-premises corporate network, then you will create a gateway subnet. And inside that subnet, you will deploy a service which is known as virtual network gateway. That is your VPN service in Azure. And similarly, in your corporate network, you have a VPN device. So those two, so that VPN device and Azure VPN service will actually communicate. They will handshake and they will enable the communication. So here I will deploy my 4th subnet, which is my management subnet. So I'll click on subnet once again. And here I will deploy another subnet and I'll type the subnet name as MGMT management subnet. And I will select IPv4 address space. And then I will type the address space of it, which is 192.168.10.96. And size I will take it /27 to keep my network uniform. This is another best practice that you should have uniform configuration in your network so that there is no confusion. So I've added the fourth subnet after the network is created. So my fourth will be start showing at the bottom. Now I've got a total of 4. If you want to delete any, you can just navigate to the right of that. There is 3 horizontal lines. Click on it and then you see an option to delete also. So this is how you can add or remove subnets after your network is created. I'll take a pause here and I'll see if you have any questions on this, because this is very important topic of cloud. As I see, as I said, it's a backbone. Unless you have a strong backbone, you already know what are the replications or what are the limitations that you will have.
Raghu, how can we edit the subnet?
Edit the subnet, you mean to say if you want to change its address space, IP address range?
Yes, actually for DB subnet, actually I have selected different option. So I have the different IP range.
Okay, so another limitation of Azure is, or in any cloud, they don't allow you to modify the subnet. So all you need to do is delete it and recreate it. There is no option to modify. You cannot modify the configuration of a network. You will only delete it and recreate it. Now that is only possible when there is no resource inside. Imagine if you had told me this on Tuesday, and by that time you had a couple of virtual machine hosted inside, then you can't even delete the subnet. You will first remove all the virtual machines, make the subnet empty, then you can delete it.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. And
so you can just click on
these
3 dots here, delete the subnet and recreate it.
Okay. Can I view the starting and the end IP of these subnets by any chance?
Yeah. That you can click on address space, the first option, and that shows you the starting and last of the network.
Okay.
This is the total network address space.
Okay. Not for subnet, right?
For subnet, it is not shown. You don't have an option to view also. So this is what it is. So you cannot see. So when you click on it, you can see it. When you click on the subnet name, then you will see the subnet address range, which is the first IP and the last IP of the subnet.
Okay. Yes, I can see it now. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. To answer your question, I think this is also possible now. So when you click on subnet, it says edit subnet. So you probably can change this information now from here. But understand this. If I try to do that, it will result in an error. For example, if I say instead of 32, instead of 27, 26, I'll get an error. If I say instead of 26, let's say 28, then it is like this. It will take the IP address from 10.0 to 15. This will also, so this will work because my current address space of this subnet is from 1 to 31. Now I'm changing it to 1 to 15 only. So that is okay, but I cannot increase it. For example, understand what is my current first and last IP of web subnet. My current first and last IP is, first IP is 10.0, last IP is 10.31. Now, if I choose a different size, which is let's say 26, then it will give me an error. Why? Because if I choose 26, then the first IP will be 10.0 and the last will be 10.63. But if I take 10.63 here, then what will happen to my application subnet? My application subnet is using that space actually. So that is the reason it will say that it will overlap with the other subnet and you cannot save it. So networking is a subject that always goes from whiteboarding to Visio to implementation. You can't you can't build network without planning it. That's the reason we did the planning on the Word document. We identified the subnets, we identified their address range, then we actually went into the implementation. Make sense?
Yes, got it.
Okay, so my network is provisioned. Let me know, guys, if you have any issues. I hope everyone is on the same page. They all have provisioned the network.
Raghuveer, I am getting one error. Can I share my screen?
Please do that.
It's giving validation is failed after configuring everything. I think I missed something. I don't know.
Click on the error. Click on that arrow. It will tell you why it is failing. It says resource name web subnet is invalid. Probably there is a space in web subnet. Just go to the IP address tab, the third tab. Okay, and just click on edit web subnet. Click on edit there. Okay, let me see. Now go to web subnet and see there's a space at the beginning.
At the beginning. There is no space at the beginning.
No space at the beginning? Okay, give me a moment. Web subnet 192.10.20 which is okay. Save it. At the beginning, okay, there is no space. That's okay. Just check it for the application database and okay, I got it. Just go back to the IP address. I can see it. Go back to the IP address.
Okay.
That's the error. The default one. You have a why is this the default one? The default one is incorrect. Just delete this default one.
Make it as management.
No, this default one, the address space of this is 190.10.96 and
okay, I forgot to change the name.
Yeah, just make it management. MGMT. You can put it management or MGMT, whatever you want to. Subnet. Okay, save it. Now click on review plus create once again.
The IP address. IP address range is IP address range is wrong, right?
96.
It should be 10.96 to 10.12. You are saying it's not right.
Right, 96, then 127.
No, it's not 10.12. Actually, it is not expanded. If you expand that column, then you will see it. So the error is coming. Okay, the management subnet. See, you're using underscore. Underscore is not allowed. You need to use hyphen. Use hyphen. Yep. And check the hyphen should be used everywhere. Underscore is not allowed in Azure.
Okay, then production.
Yep. The space and underscore is not. You should not have a space in your name and you should not have underscore. It's hyphen all the time.
Okay, my underscore.
Now click on this once again. Resource, let me read it. Now see application subnet, it says invalid. The name cannot be 180 characters as much begins with a word letter and must end with a letter or with the A. This may not invalid resource target resource at VM group provider TCS production. Okay, go back. This is just because of naming it is coming. Yeah. Click on the IP address space. So name is web subnet, application subnet, database subnet. Name looks okay. 10.0, 32.63, 64.96, 36. See, everything else looks okay, but sometimes this happens due to synchronization. Go back to the basics tab. Let me start from the basics. Okay, so TCS production. Starting at TCS. Before T, is there any space?
No. I'm taking the black space, but nothing is.
Okay, no problem. Just go to the next.
I didn't check anything in security.
Security is okay. I hope you have not checked any boxes. Yeah.
Yes.
Address space. This is where it comes.
I will cross check.
So just go to all the
names.
subnets one by one and please make sure that there is no space in the name.
If there is no space here.
Okay. Go to the other one. See, there's a space here in application subnet. There was a space. Now do review plus create.
Check the remaining as well.
Yeah. There was a space here also.
Yeah.
See, worked. So it was because of the space. Yeah. So guys, this is a learning for all of you. Please make sure that there is no space in the name of the service, name of the resource. If there is a space, Azure will not take it. So space means exception, and Azure doesn't do exception handling. So it gives you an error. Is everyone on the same page?
Yeah.
All right. So network is created. Now the next thing is so I'll share the screen now. So our network is created. Now what we are going to do, we are going to host a virtual machine in this network, and then we will deploy web services on that virtual machine. That's what we are going to do. So let's go to virtual machines. And you will need to deploy virtual machines here. So just click on create virtual machine. Okay, so we'll build a virtual machine. We'll use the same options, guys, which is you choose your resource group, whatever resource group you were using so far. The virtual machine name. This is going to be my web server. I will deploy web services on it. So I can probably say web VM. This is my web VM. And there is another way to give the name. When you deploy your virtual machines as part of your lab, how will I know that which virtual machine hosts which operating system? You can do like this, Win2K16. What does it mean? It is Windows 2016. And then you can say web. So it basically shows that it's a Windows 2016 server that is probably configured for web services. Are you with me on this? This is how name should go. Okay.
Yes.
Then comes region is East US. Availability zone is no infrastructure redundancy required. Security type, I will choose standard. In the image, I will choose Windows 2016 Data Center Gen 2. Run with Azure Spot discount, no. Virtual machine size. As I said, I have a limit of 10 CPU core in each region. So I will not go beyond 2 CPU core on any virtual machine. So for this virtual machine, now try and see if you can standard B2MS, because it's a, I'm saying, low cost virtual machine. It costs you only 5,000 rupees per month, which is not even 20 rupees, I'm saying 200 rupees per day, and not even 10, 20 rupees per hour. So you can go with this. If you don't get this, then go with any 2 CPU core virtual machine. And also the RAM should not go beyond 16 GB, 8 GB. Then provide the username and password as your user. Password, whatever you provide. Is everyone with me on this? I provide the first tab is over, but I provided the VM name, location, The availability is no infrastructure redundancy required. Security is standard. Image is 2016. And then I've selected the VM size as standard V2MS, 2 CPU cores, 8 GB RAM. And the administrator account, username and password I've put. That's it. Then I'll click on next, the disk option. In the disk option, to reduce the cost, I will choose standard SSD instead of premium. By default, Azure would have premium selected because they want me to pay. So I will select the OS disk size will be 127 GB. I will just go with the default. However, I will select standard SSD instead of premium. Rest of the things, I will leave it as it is. Are you with me on this, on the second tab?
Yes.
Yes. Next is networking, very important. This is where you need to select your network and subnet. So I will select from the drop down the network that I created, and I will select web subnet from that network because I'm going to host a web service. So I'll select my network and subnet. Rest of the information, I'll keep it as it is. I'll just check the box that says delete public IP and NIC when the VM is deleted. Yes, I will do that. Rest, I will keep it as it is, no changes. Then I'll go to the next tab, which is management. On the management tab, I don't need to select anything, but just go with the default. On the monitoring tab, nothing, just go with the default. On the advanced tab, nothing, just go with the default. On the tags tab, it's optional whether you want to give it, otherwise just move on and hit review plus create. So the cost of my machine is going to be around 8 rupees per hour, which is okay. So let this virtual machine get created. Then we will log into this virtual machine, deploy web services on it. I will share a sample application with you. You all will host it and we'll make it a web server. So let this virtual machine get provisioned.
Raghuveer, actually, I'm facing an issue while provisioning a machine. It's saying like validation is failed, and when I check for the error, it's showing following SKU have failed for capacity restrictions, standard D2 version 3.
Okay, so basically that virtual machine is not available. Choose, so okay, please share your screen. Let me quickly guide you.
Yes, please.
So the more you work with portal, the more comfort level you get. Okay, so it says the requested VM size for response. This has failed to capacity restriction DSV2 3 is currently not. So this size is not available in East US data center of Azure. Go back to the basic tab. Basic tab. And in the basic tab where you have the option for size, go to the size option, go up. Yeah, over here, click on see all sizes. You have V2MS. Why are you not selecting V2MS there?
No, actually, I tried that as well.
Select V2MS for a moment.
Yes.
Okay. Now click on review plus create.
I'll just change the disk.
So directly click on review plus create. Rest of the tabs already premium SSD. Remove it. Do it standard. Never use premium SSD, guys. The cost will be 10 times of what you will pay for standard. Click on review plus create. Okay, now click on validation field. Let me see what is the error. SQL failed for the capacity reservation. Please try to deploy another location or different zone. Okay, you've selected zone. Go back to basic tab and scroll down. Have you selected zone here? No infrastructure, which is okay. 2016 data center. How many virtual machines do you already have?
I have only one, the Azure AD that we created earlier.
That's okay. Go back to the size. We'll choose another size. Sometimes it happens you don't have sizes available. We'll choose another size. Now click on see all sizes. And here you select this. Scroll it down. We want to see all the sizes. These are most used. Scroll it down. Scroll it down. Go to now over here on B, not B2MS. No. Go up. There's a scroll it down. There's B series V2. B series V2. B series V2, the up one. That is only one option. Yeah, this one. Expand it. From here you select it. From here you select B2, this one, the second one. 2 CPU core, 8 GB RAM. Yeah, this one. Select this one. And now click on review plus create. Probably this size is available. Let's see. Click on validation field. It's the same error. It is also not available in East US. Please try and deploy it to a different location. Different zones. See. Okay, this is happening in your case only. Rest of them are able to do it actually.
Yes, actually.
That's okay. We'll select some other size. See, it's all hit and try.
Yes, actually, I was getting this issue yesterday as well.
Select
when we tried
E series. That's okay. Select E series. We have tried B and D. Probably E series is available. Select a size from E. E is an echo. Yeah. The minimum you will not get actually 228. Just select the first one, 216. The first one on the top. And what we will do once the VM is provisioned, we will probably resize the VM later on.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. Select it. Now review plus create. What Is it the same error?
Yes, same error.
Oh, no. Give me a moment. This size is also not available.
I'm not sure, like actually I have once selected the earlier options, so I'm not able to figure out this error.
No, that's okay. It is directly related to size. Sometimes it happens. See what is happening. Some 15, 20 people are simultaneously selecting sizes in East US. This happens sometimes, but that's okay. We can fix it. Do one thing. Provision this VM in West US. Instead of East, provision it in West US. Select the location as West.
West US 2.
Yeah. Now click on review plus create. No. Now go to network tab. Yeah, availability set. No, same options the way you know. Yeah. Now go to network tab. It should be standard SSD. Yeah. Ignore. Go to network tab. Network. Yeah. SSD network tab. Networking is an error. Yeah. On the virtual network. Yeah. This is okay. So you will not get your network is in East US. You're trying to build it in West US. I'm just trying to see whether the size is available in West US or not. Okay. Great. Now click on review plus create.
Basics.
Click there. What is the option? What is the error now? Scroll it down. What is missing? Scroll it down. Okay, this size. Now it says that size, this currently unavailable for this subscription. That size is not available. Go to B2MS. Probably that is available. See if it is available. Yeah. Click on review plus create. It's a temporary issue. Sometimes it happens. I've seen that in my training. See, it is passing the validation, which means it was directly related to the size, but it doesn't mean that it will happen all the time. Probably after some time it will not happen. But since we want to understand a concept, you go ahead and with this, I just provision this VM.
Okay, maybe disk I will just select it. Standard.
Provision the VM now. Okay, rest of the participants, they were able to provision the VM, right? No participant has faced any issue. Those who are able to provision the VM, kindly raise your hands. Okay, it seems that all of them were able to provision the VM. Great. So guys, we'll wait for another, 2-3 minutes while Dhananjay is provisioning the VM. Or probably what we can do, we can take a break. Let's take a break for 15 minutes. Let's have tea, coffee, what? Is everyone back?
Yes.
Is everyone back?
Yes, Rahul.
Okay, guys, let's get started. Today, I will not hold you back for a longer duration. I understand you probably have some personal work or commitments for the evening. So let's just complete this topic. So now that we have provisioned the VM, what are we going to do? We're going to connect to the VM. We're going to take remote of the VM. Okay. So is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the VM that I provisioned. I'll connect to this VM. Now I can, there are many methods to connect. I can just type MSTSC, copy the VM IP address and connect and put that here and connect, or I can download the RDP file, whichever method you prefer, whichever method you're comfortable with. Let's connect to your VM. So I'm connecting to my VM now. Okay, now what are we going to do? In this VM, we are going to deploy an application. See, if you really want to test the security features and security capabilities, you need to have an application which is similar to a production application or a replica of production. So what I'm going to do, guys, go on mute when you're not talking. So what I'm going to do, because this gets recorded into the session. Okay, so my VM is getting connected. Now you've deployed Active Directory domain services on the other VM and made it a domain controller. Similarly, I'm going to promote this VM as a web server. And for that, I will need to add web services role to this VM. So how do we add a role to the VM? We will click on manage. Under server manager, we click on manage, and then there is an option that says add role and feature. So we click here and then we add role and feature to the VM. So server manager is currently busy. Let's wait for a minute. Now we click on add role and feature and we get this screen. We click next, 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 and this is where we see all the roles which are available. Let me know when you are on the screen, guys.
Yeah, Raghu, can you please provide me the name?
Name of what?
Username.
Username of what?
For VM.
VM username you know because you provisioned your VM. So when you provision the VM, you basically created a username and password, right? So you should know it. Did you forget?
Yes.
So you forgot your VM username basically. Okay. If you forgot the username of the VM, there is an option to recover it. Not exactly recover it, but change it. So on the VM, when you scroll it down here under operations, let me see where it is, under security, under monitoring, automation, backup and disaster recovery. No.
Actually, I'm set similar to you. Just.
I didn't get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I'm creating similar to you.
So if you are you able to log into your VM? I'm asking. Did you log into your VM?
Just provide me your username just because I'm set similar to you.
Azure user. That was Azure user. Maybe you can try that.
Okay, let me try.
No, Azure user is what I was using. You already whatever credentials you have selected or created while creating the user, you need to use those credentials only. If you were following me, then it was Azure user.
Can you allow just I forgot the username? Yeah, if I'm able to log in.
Yeah. So once you log in, then you need to come to the screen, and in the synchronization lab, you basically deployed this service, Active Directory domain service. This is the service that you deployed, right? But this time we are going to promote this server as a web server. So we will select the service at the bottom, which says web server. There is a service which says web server IIS. This is the service or role we need to select, right? So we'll select web services role. It opens a pop-up. Click on add feature. You will go back to the same screen, web services role. Click next. Just go with the default option. Next, 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 and install. So what are you doing? You are adding web services role to this server. so that you can deploy web services of an application on this server. That's what you're going to do here. Okay, so it is deploying web services role on the VM. So the role is deployed. It says installation succeeded. I'll click on close. So this part is done. This server is now promoted as a web server. Now, how do you know that it has got the role? For example, when you deployed Active Directory domain services, you had an option to navigate to Active Directory users in computer, and you know that it has a role. Over here, for web services, I can open this PC. In this PC, you have a C drive. When you open C drive, you will see a folder with the name inetpub. Now, this folder represents or confirms the presence of web services on this server. That's one way of checking it. Do you all see that folder?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, when you go inside this folder, you will see a couple of subfolders, and one of the subfolder is www root. Now, this is the folder where you deploy the index file of your application, the home page of your website. And in rest of the folders, you deploy the appropriate pages. So if you go to www root, you will see that it already has some files. It has a start page of IIS. The web services in Windows is known as IIS. In Linux, it is known as Apache Tomcat. So this is IIS. Now we will delete these two files. Delete the two files. This is where we will deploy our application. So I already have a simple HTML page created for an application. I will copy that page here, that index file here, and my application will be deployed. Now I'll share it with all of you. I'm putting that into the chat window. Please download it on your system and then upload this file. Upload this file into your virtual machine. So first you will copy this file into your into the jump host, and then from jump host you will copy this file into your virtual machine. Did you receive the file on the chat?
But we are I'm unable to download the file. It is asking to go to the some home page form.
Yeah, similar to me.
Okay, you are not able to get the file. So probably what we can do on your virtual machine, on your web server, on the web server, it's an Azure VM. There is no restriction, right? So what I will do the other way, I'm saying that's where you need to learn the technology. So I'll go to my storage account. I upload this file in the storage account and you can directly access it on your web server. So learning the service is not important. Understanding the application of services is equally important. So I'm going to the storage account. This storage account has a container. It's running a bit slow. System is running a bit slow today. I'm just enabling the file access for you. Okay, I've enabled it. Now I'll directly share the URL. You can use this URL in the virtual machine. You can type this URL in the virtual machine and you can directly download the HTML file there. in the virtual machine. Yep, great, it's working. So guys, just get this file on the virtual machine. Are you able to access the URL?
We are able to access the URL, but that file directly opens the format, the web form it will open forms.
That you can save it. When it directly opens like this, I'll show you. For example, you type the URL here. I'll get you the URL once again. Let's say it directly opens, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to say. You can save it. I'm saying you can download it. No, you can alt.
Do Control S.
Yeah, Control S. You can download it on your system by doing Control S. It is directly opening because it's an HTML file and you're putting that into a browser. Browser is configured to open HTML files, so it directly gets opened.
Can I save it in the www root file directly?
Yeah, you can do that. That's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
This is the home page of our application, and we need to bring it to this folder, by hook or by crook.
Done.
Okay. So this is a typical HTML file that you have. Okay. So what you have done, you've actually hosted an application or a web app or a website in your server. How do you check it? The first thing that you do when you deploy an application, you first test it internally and then you publish it to the internet, right? That's what the process that we follow. So first we will test it internally, whether my website is accessible internally or not. So how do I access it? I can open Internet Explorer. Open Internet Explorer on that machine, on that virtual machine. And in the Internet Explorer, the reason I had to open Internet Explorer like this, because at the bottom I have my local system taskbar. So after the Internet Explorer opens on that machine, you just need to type http:// with this URL. You can check whether a server is a web server, and if it is a web server, then whether it is hosting any web application or not. So this is how you check the availability of an application on a server locally. So you need to type http:// You can directly type localhost also. It hardly makes any difference. And when you type that, then your website will come up. If it comes up, then it is a guarantee. Then it is the confirmation or the validation that your website is up and running on the server. Let me know when you're able to see this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? So which means your website is up and running on this server. Now, let's see whether this website is running, whether this website is accessible over the internet or not. Okay. So we'll come back to Azure portal now. At this point, we'll come back to Azure portal. And from the Azure portal, we will need to navigate to the virtual machine and to this virtual machine and get the public IP of it. Get the public IP of your virtual machine. This is the public IP that I've got for my virtual machine, because on this machine, my website is hosted, my web application is hosted. So I'll copy the public IP and I'll put that public IP into the browser. See, if I had a domain name, I would have gone to my domain registrar and created a text record to bind this public IP with the domain name. But since I don't have a domain name, I can directly access my application using its public IP. Because at the end of the day, it is public IP which internet understands, not the domain name. Domain name is for human understanding. So I'll type the public IP and hit enter and see whether I'm able to access my website. For me, it's not working. What about the status for you guys? For me, it says site cannot be reached.
Actually, we will enable that services.
Not working.
Okay. So it says not working. Is this the same case with everyone?
Yes.
Great. Let's come back to the document. Let's understand what it says. Secure communication. First feature of network. Network allows secure communication. Now, what is happening basically? What is happening right now, if you want to understand it from the image perspective, this is what is happening. Let me show you for one VM. Okay. So this is what is happening. You are typing the IP address of the VM. Here it says domain name, but that's okay. You're typing the IP address. This is a public IP. Then this IP is searched over the internet, and then it is hitting this web server. This is the web server which is hosting the website. But what is happening here? The traffic is not reaching to the web server because there is a virtual firewall which is front-ending the web server. And on that virtual firewall, this kind of traffic is not allowed. That is why you're not able to access the website. This is a cloud concept which says that in public cloud, all traffic to internet is allowed by default. All traffic to internet is allowed by default. However, all traffic from internet is blocked by default. All traffic to internet is allowed. That is why when you connect to your virtual machine, you're able to browse the internet. You're able to open any website without any restriction. So all traffic to internet is allowed. Or you can say all outbound traffic to internet is allowed, and all incoming traffic from internet is blocked by default. Is it making sense to you guys? Now, what kind of traffic is this? This is an incoming traffic from internet, because this is where you are. You're sitting here, probably in India. You're typing the website IP address. The request goes from India all the over from India, from internet, and it tries to reach to the web server which is hosting the web application. However, your request is not reaching to the web server because it is getting denied. It is getting denied because of this behavior. All incoming traffic from internet is blocked by default. And in Azure, the service which is responsible for filtering the traffic that comes from internet or blocking the traffic that comes from internet is known as Network Security Group. In short, it is known as NSG. This is the name of the service in Azure. So that's the name of the service in Azure, which is responsible for blocking all traffic from internet. So all the traffic from internet is blocked. Now you will say that you are able to RDP into your Azure VM. Is that not a traffic from internet? The answer is yes. That is a traffic from internet. Then the question is then why it is not getting blocked then? See, you can RDP into your VM. That is also a traffic from internet. Then why it is not getting blocked? It is not getting blocked because NSG, the Network Security Group Service, has rules. It's like a firewall. NSG is a virtual firewall in Azure that front ends all the virtual machines and subnet. All the traffic that comes in and goes out passes through NSG, and based on the available rules, it is the traffic. The traffic either gets blocked or allowed by the NSG. So NSG is a virtual firewall in Azure that is front-ending all the VMs. All the traffic that comes in and goes out has to pass through the NSG, and it is filtered through the rules, and it is allowed or blocked. Okay, now let's see it. So what I've shown you written, let me show you. So if I go to my VM, are you able to see my Azure portal?
Yes.
This is the VM. Over here in the VM overview blade under networking, there is an option that says network settings. When you click on this option, it will show you the network settings of the VM. Network related configuration of the VM. And that's what we are focusing on in this session today, the network. So in this network related configuration, you see an option that says NSG, Network Security Group, which is attached to the network interface of the VM. Network interface is the hardware which captures the IP address. Your laptop has an NIC card, and similarly, an Azure VM also has a network interface. So this is the NSG. Now the answer to your question that if NSG is if by default Azure public cloud is configured to block all incoming traffic from internet, then why am I able to take remote of the VM? You are able to take remote of the VM because when you created the VM, at that point in time, this option was checked. So because of this, a rule was created, an inbound rule was created to allow RDP traffic on port 3389, TCP 3389 from source, which is any. When I say source any, which means internet. Destination any, which means any destination in your network. So because of this rule, and the action of this rule is allowed. Because of this rule, you're able to take remote of the VM. If I just delete this rule, you will lose remote of your VM also. This is the reason. Now the question is, if I'm able to take remote of the VM, why am I not able to access the website? Why my website is not working? Your website is not getting accessed because what is happening? When the traffic comes to this NSG, when you send the traffic from internet, before it reaches this web server, it has to pass through this NSG. Now in the inbound port rule, do you see any rule that allows traffic from internet on port 80? You're sending traffic on port 80. Do you see a rule to allow traffic on port 80?
No.
No, that is the reason. That is the reason you are not able to access your website. Now, what we are going to do, we'll create a rule, an inbound rule on port 80, and you all will be able to access your website. So let's create a rule. Over here, you see this option that says create port rule. Here you can create both inbound and outbound rule. So what kind of rule are we creating? Inbound, because this is an inbound traffic. So I'll create an inbound rule here. The source will be any. Any means internet. Port is star. Star means any. Any source with any port on the internet. Now destination. If you feel that any destination is not okay, then you can also put the IP address of your VM here. But I'll go with the default, which is any destination. Then comes service. This is important here. If you put custom, then you can put the port yourself. But if you don't know, then in the service, you can click on drop down and you can select 80. Sorry, you can select HTTP because that's the traffic that you're sending. The moment you select HTTP, it will know that the port that HTTP uses is port 80. So this service, shows some common ports that typically customers use, common ports. So I'll select HTTP 80 and it automatically picks protocol at TCP. It knows that HTTP port 80 is TCP. It automatically picks this information. Then comes action. What action you want to take for this behavior? When this behavior matches, when there is a traffic from internet to this network on port 80, what is the action? I will say allow this traffic. And then comes priority. Priority basically means what is the priority? If there are two rules and they coincide, they conflict, then the rule with lowest priority will take the precedence. So priority is by default coming. I will leave it as it is. That's it. I will just click on add. So I have just added a rule on port 80. I have just added a rule in the NSG, which is port 80, TCP port 80 from any source to any destination in this network and allow. Now, after this rule is created, if I just go back to the page where I was trying to access the website, and if I just refresh it, I will see my website accessible. I will start to get response from my web server, or in other words, I will be able to access the website. And this could be anyone in this world. Anyone can access your website. Your website is now publicly accessible. Let me see whether the rule is created. Yeah, the rule is created.
I'm able to access.
Yep. In my case, it is taking time. So when you create an NSG rule, sometimes it takes a couple of minutes to get propagated. So I'm also able to access my website now. Now, it is not that you are able to access your website. Anybody can access your website in this world. I'm saying I put the IP address of my server in the chat. You all can copy from there and you can access that website anywhere in this world. It's accessible to everyone.
We can select HTTPS also, right? When you are hosting any web server or something, if showing as not secure.
No. If you select HTTPS, then you will need to deploy SSL certificates on your web server.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, we have not deployed SSL certificates, so we will always go with HTTP, which is plain text communication.
Yeah.
Obviously, it will say not secure because you don't have certificates. These days, all the websites have SSL certificates. Yeah. So we are not learning how do we host a website, how do we secure a website. What we are trying to learn is the networking concept of Azure and a service which is known as Network Security Group. And instead of explaining that service first and then doing the lab, I thought of using this approach so that you understand the concept. So now that you have understood the concept that in Azure, if I want my machines, if I want any traffic to allow, I'm saying if I want my network to accept any traffic, I will have to configure a rule in the NSG that is front-ending my virtual machine. So every virtual machine has an NSG. It could be a common NSG or it could be an individual NSG to all the virtual machines. Okay. Now let's see the other aspect of NSG. I'll go back to my virtual machine here. On this virtual machine, I have internet available. I can browse any website on this virtual machine. So on this virtual machine, I can browse any website, guys. I can go to Internet Explorer and you can see I can browse any websites on this virtual machine. Like I can open Yahoo, obviously whatever websites Internet Explorer supports. It's an old, so Yahoo is working. You can see I can open Microsoft.com. It is also working here. I can open, let's say TCS.com. The TCS is opened up. So internet is working on my machine. Is everyone with me on this? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, why internet is working on my machine? The answer is once again here. All outbound traffic to internet is allowed. But where it is allowed, from where it is allowed, it is from network security group, NSG. So NSG has an outbound rule that allows traffic to internet. I'll show you that rule now. So if I go to the same network settings, once again, go to the NSG, it shows me inbound rules, then it also has outbound rules. I'll just expand the outbound rules and I'll show you the rule. This is the rule, the one in the middle. It's a default rule. Read this rule. It says port any, protocol any, source any, and destination is internet. Because of this rule, and the action is allowed. Because of this rule, I'm able to browse the internet on my virtual machine. Now, let's say my organization doesn't allow internet access on the virtual machine, especially on the servers. Servers are hosting critical data. I don't want internet access. If internet access is there on the server, any employee can log into the server and upload data, or open Gmail and upload data into it, open Google Drive and upload data into it. So I want to block internet on my VM. How will I block internet on my VM? Very simple. I will once again go and create an outbound rule, outbound port rule. And on the outbound port rule, I will say source as any. Source is now my VM. I can say any, or I can put the IP address of my VM. So I'll say any. In the destination, I will use a service tag, this option. And in the service tag, I'll select internet as service. So what I'm saying that source is any, destination is internet. Now what I want to do, since I've selected destination any, I don't need to bother about this service custom range. In this destination port range, I will say star, which means on internet, any port. I'm saying star and then I'll say deny. This is the crux here. So source any, which source basically means any VM from my network. Destination is internet and any port on the internet. Sometimes employees are smart, they use proxy servers. and proxy servers can manipulate the port. So I'm selecting star so that even if my employee tries to use a proxy to browse the internet, he or she will not be able to do that. So destination port is star and the action is deny. The priority is, now you can see, the internet access is allowed on priority 65,500.01. And I'm creating another rule to deny the internet access. So they are conflicting rules. One rule is allowing the access, other rule is going to deny. So whichever has lowest priority will take the precedence. So that's the reason I will select a priority which is less than 65,001. I can select the priority as 64,999 also. But it says my priority. If I create a custom rule, the priority should always be between 100 and 4096. So I can also select 4095, any priority which is less than the priority of the other rule which it conflicts with. That's it. I'll click on add. The moment I'll click on add, within a minute, I will lose internet connectivity on my virtual machine. My rule is created. I go back to my virtual machine. All I need to do, refresh these websites and none of them will come. They all will go away. See, I'm refreshing now. One by one, I refresh all the 3 websites and then I will lose access. See, I refreshed it. Now the circle will keep moving around because this virtual machine have just lost access to internet. So what is happening when this virtual machine tries to browse the internet? It's an outbound traffic. That traffic goes to the NSG. NSG sees that I have a rule that doesn't allow this traffic and the traffic is discarded. Packet is dropped. And now I lose internet connectivity from my virtual machine. I cannot open any website. If I open, let's say, Instagram.com, nothing will work. See, Instagram.com. If I try to open Facebook.com, nothing will work now. No website will come up. It will just say waiting and then in the end say page cannot be displayed because I've lost internet on this VM. Are you with me on this?
Prabhu, I kept the priority as 400.
That's okay. It has to be less than 65,001.
But I'm still
which is another rule that allows the. Sorry?
But I'm still able to access the internet from my VM.
No, you will not be. Just refresh the page. You will lose access. The way I have just lost access. Yep, the way I've lost the access. Now on the same page, see, I'm not changing the page. On the same page, I will minimize it. I'll go back to this rule, which is blocking the internet. I will delete this rule now. So I'm deleting this security rule. You can see I'm deleting the rule now. The moment I'll delete this deny rule, the other rule which allows access to the internet will take precedence now because it is the only rule which is there. So the rule is deleted. I'll go back to my VM. See, on the same tab, I did not change the tab. Now all I will do, I will refresh all the pages and I will get the response back because this happens in real time. See, Yahoo is back. Microsoft will be back. The other one was TCS. I'll refresh, it will be back. TCS is back. Then I tried to open other, which is this domain. Then this one, Facebook also. If I refresh, Facebook will come. Now it says Facebook is not supported on this browser, which is a different thing, but Facebook is working. This is the live demonstration of network security group in Azure, which is a service that acts as a virtual firewall that front ends all the virtual machines, and any traffic that comes in and goes out has to pass through the NSG. Based on the inbound and outbound rules which is there in the NSG, the traffic will be treated. It will either be denied or it will be allowed. That's the concept of network security group in Azure. If you want to see the documentation of it, I'll share the documentation.
Okay, we can also delete that group, or we can keep it for future coming days use?
See, No, so you need to delete that rule, because if you keep that rule to deny internet, then you will not be able to browse the internet, and you actually need to browse the internet on the VM. When you deploy Microsoft Defender for endpoint, how it will communicate with its management services. It will use port 443 outbound to internet to communicate. So internet has to be enabled.
Sure.
I was just showing you a use case of NSG for both inbound and outbound, that you can deny traffic to internet, or you can deny any specific port also. You don't want any traffic on port 443, you can deny the port also. You want to completely deny the internet, you can deny internet also. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so this is the documentation on network security group. I'll share this documentation with you in the chat window. And I'll also put that into the document, into our session transcript. So this is about network security group. Next is application security group. Now, what is application security group? Application security group is a subset of NSG. It's a subset of NSG. Typically, organizations don't use this service because they primarily use NSG to filter traffic. But how does ASG work? ASG works like that. So let's say you have an NSG. What you will do in the NSG, you will attach or associate. In Azure, we use the term associate. You will attach or associate the NSG. You will attach and associate it at subnet level. That's what you will do. You will attach it at subnet level, and then you will have ASG attached at VM level. That's the concept. So what most of the customers do, what I used to do when I was actually into operations, I was managing operations or I was supporting operations, I would use NSG, and even today customers use NSG. They don't use ASG because they don't find that service useful. They want to use NSG most of the time. So you can read about ASG also. In fact, I can share a lab with you which talks about wherein you can deploy the NSG and ASG together, and you can see the difference into the working of it. Give me a moment here. This is the lab. This is part of AZ500, which is Azure Security Engineer certification. I'll share this lab URL. Over here, you will get step-by-step guidance to test NSG and ASG together. It shows you the diagram first, that how it looks like. So you can see here, you have NSG deployed at subnet level. Then inside subnet, you have two VMs, managed web server and management server, and they all are controlled by ASG, Application Security Group. Now, as per the production environment, this design is incorrect. Why? Because I would not want my web server and my management server to go in the same subnet. I have created a separate subnet for my web server and for my management server. So when there are separate subnet, I can directly manage I can directly control the traffic using NSG. I will only need to use ASG when I put everything into one subnet. It is like dumping everything into the same, but that's not how it is. And that's not the best practice of network design. But Azure has a service for customers who are not aware of right network design, or who ended up putting everything into the same subnet. Then Azure says that, okay, now you want to restrict traffic, use ASG service at the VM level and put NSG at the subnet level. But in our case, we are quite protected, because in our case, we are following this diagram, which is we keep our web server separate, app server separate, DB server separate, and for each segment, we put an NSG that is applicable for for all the machines in that subnet. Make sense? Guys, compare this diagram wherein you have a virtual network that has 3 different subnet and one machine in each subnet, and this machine represents the subnet. I'm saying this is a web server, this is an app server, this is a database server. So NSG is more than sufficient to control this traffic. And in the other diagram that you have here, this is not as per the right design, wherein you have one network. Inside that network, you have only one subnet, and inside that subnet, you have both web server and management server together. So you are using application security group to manage the traffic, but this is a wrong design. No architect, even Azure, supports this design anymore. That's the reason no customers uses NSG. They primarily use, though no customers uses application security group, they primarily use network security group, because this helps you in the long run when you deploy firewall and other services also. So that's the concept of NSG and ASG that you can read more about in the documentation which I shared with you, which is here. It shows you the default security rules, inbound rules, outbound rules, which you were looking at. So just read this documentation and you will have a fair idea of this service. I'm open to questions if you have any, guys.
Rahul, you were disabling the IE enhanced security configuration on the web server manager, right? Can you
Come again? Repeat your question. What I was disabling?
You were disabling IE enhanced security configuration settings to off, right? Because it was
Give me a minute. All right, I'll share my screen. Let me know when you're able to see it.
Yes, we can see.
We can see it now.
Great. So let's get started. First, I would like to see whether you have completed the identity synchronization assignment, because that is also important from Microsoft Defender for identity tool perspective that we will be covering next week. So this part is very important. So who has completed the assignment, who can present the screen and show that it is actually working?
I have completed, Raghu.
Okay, please share your screen and show it to the participants.
Yeah, sure. One second.
Okay, and while you are presenting it and showing it, I believe I can stop the session recording, because that is absolutely not needed. Once I will start speaking, once I will start covering a topic, then I will start the session recording. Hope that is okay with everyone. Or you want me to put this into session recording also?
Sure, you can better stop the recording.
Yeah, okay. So I'm stopping the recording now.